Engle, director of the theater.
Yeah, good.
And our star's first theater teacher.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you very much for being
I didn't really do my fact checking before I started saying that, so I'm glad
No,
to have
it's true.
confirmation.
No, it's true.
It's true.
It's true.
Welcome home, welcome
Thank you.
back,
Thank you.
Mahershala Al-Hashbaz.
Thank you, thank you.
Congratulations on a fabulous year.
Yeah.
My hunch is the proudest achievement is the birth of your daughter.
Yes.
Just a guess.
Yes, yes, yes.
Just knowing you.
Yeah, and 4 days before the Oscars, so there was a little bit of pressure because our baby was due on February 13th, and then it was suddenly like the 20th, and the Oscars are the 26th, and they're talking about inducing, and my wife is like, nah, let's just wait. I was like, yeah, okay. So it was a pressure-packed situation, and but honestly, if it meant she was in labor on the Oscars, I would have been at the hospital. So it is what it is. But yeah.
Good. Well, we have about a half an hour. We're going to take 20 minutes to talk about the film and a little bit about your first act of your career, and maybe touch back into some of your St. Mary's memories. And then we have some student questions as well, which we'll end our program with.
All right.
So thank you all for being here.
Thank you for being here. Sincerely, thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels so great. It's so good. So my first question is, takes a little bit of a setup, and I might not get through it without crying, so I'm going to do it first.
I'm here for you.
Thank you, Mahershala Ali. I know. Moonlight began as a short story by Terrell McCraney called Black Boys Look Blue in the Moonlight.
Yeah.
And it's a story based on his own coming of age in Miami. The New Yorker writer Hilton Als, a writer, a film and theater critic I greatly admire, described being disoriented the first time he saw the film. Not so much by what happens as by what doesn't happen. For instance, Juan doesn't take that runaway kid under his wing in order to pimp him out, turn him into a drug runner, to abuse him, etc. Instead, he brings him home for a hot meal. Als writes, Moonlight undoes our expectations as viewers and as human beings too. As we watch, another movie plays in our minds, real-life footage of the many forms of damage done to black men, which can sometimes lead them to turn that hateful madness on their own kind, passing on the poison that was their inheritance. So I'm intrigued by that idea of the movie that is in our minds, where our expectations are being undermined, thrown out the window, that other movie.
Right.
What was your first response to the script? What drew you into it? And did you too have that experience of the film isn't going where I think it's going to go? The story is subverting the stereotypes and expectations.
Well, having spent, like, sincerely 17 years just reading professionally, reading scripts. So let me just take this back, because I'm going to answer this question. I left here and I went to grad school, and that was 3 years of just straight up theater work. And in that time, though, especially looking how I look, you are doing Shakespeare and Chekhov and Ibsen and Sam Shepard and all these extraordinary writers, you know. And the wonderful thing about theater, especially for a person of color, is that there is this little reality of the theater world, which I got my first taste of here, where there isn't, and that could be different for certain programs, but there isn't as much of an emphasis on on race, or they will use race in order to say, yeah, but we're gonna do it, we're gonna make this choice because this person is Latino, or because this person is African American. That's part of the statement inherent in this. So theater has always been a safe space to be very brave. And so in my 3 very focused years of working at NYU, I kind of got lulled into believing that that is the reality of the world. And having left there, then I started to get these character descriptions that you can play this part, but you can't play this part, is what it's essentially telling you, right? And then, so the people who are writing these stories that take place that come from the Oaklands, and old Oakland, not this Oakland, but Oakland I grew up around, Detroit, you know, these cities that have a populace that is very nuanced, but has a very brown presence. Those stories that you're seeing, these movies that get greenlit, those are not written by anybody from there. So it becomes this critique or some weird observation piece. And you being from there goes, I don't really recognize that person for a while. Then eventually you realize that people exist in 2 different spaces. So there's the reality of what a drug addict looks like, that's your cousin. And then there's the television movie reality of that we've grown to almost accept as a reality. So when you see something that looks more like the real thing, it's a little bit jarring. You start going, is this a documentary? Like, what is this? And that was my experience in a nutshell in reading it. Because for 17 years I'd read scripts that were this other version of reality that had Black people in them. And for what that was, I would go, oh, this is solid. Okay, I could do something with this. When I read Moonlight, I felt like I was looking at the life of a cousin or a friend. It felt real in a way that I hadn't had the opportunity to relate to in a way. So I have family in jail right now. I had friends from Hayward who were drug dealers and family in Oakland, but then there's a couple of people who make it out, who do okay, who are able to, in some ways, and this is not the truth for Black people are not a monolith. So there's different experiences for people, you know, and obviously, you know, we have people who come from disenfranchised communities, but there's a lot of middle class income Black folks who can afford to go to college without financial aid and all this other stuff. But there is a percentage of the country that can't. And I know some of those people and was around them and grew up with them and could have been one of them. And so to read that script and it felt real and they felt human, because usually when you see a drug dealer, he is there as a function, purely to function as a drug dealer. He's not there to be a human being. But you could see a white collar criminal who can ruin all our lives, but they're human, right? They'll be like, you'll feel bad for them. You're like, oh no, don't take Michael Douglas to jail. Like, you know.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like my next question was just any hesitation about playing a drug dealer. It sounds like you said not at all. Not in this project.
Not at all, because he was human.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
I wanted to play somebody who was human, and I had a visceral reaction to this piece. Like it broke my heart, and here's the thing: I saw Ta-Nehisi Coates speak on. If you guys haven't read his work, read his work, right?
Yeah.
His brother. But I got to see him speak. I like that. That's how the kids do. No, I saw him speak at Moonlight. Barry Jenkins was the director, had won something. And so he got up and introduced Barry. And he had this conversation, again, talking about representation and to some degree being underrepresented. So in the Black community, there is this desire, and especially from like folks of my generation, a little bit older, to see African Americans presented in a positive light, right? And don't think it's not lost on me that I play Cuban in this, so a Latino American. But there's this desire to see yourself portrayed in a positive light. But what I love that Ta-Nehisi said was that it's important for us to differentiate between productive images and positive images. Like, positive images are not always helpful. It's sometimes you gotta be able to have a productive conversation. Like, is this gonna push us forward though? Looking at this particular situation and looking at these circumstances, looking at the circumstance of this character, is the conversation that is had after seeing that, is it productive? Is it something where we can improve as a result? And if it's productive, then inherently it's positive, right? But if it's positive just to, like, I think Hidden Figures is a positive movie, right? It's positive, you know, positive images. I love all those women involved in it. I think the story is extraordinarily important. It's positive. It's good. Moonlight is not positive though. It's productive, you know? And sometimes we need to have that tough love conversation. And if there's space for that, then I think that's something I want to be a part of. That's more interesting to me, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
The first time I saw the film, I would not have guessed that most of your scenes, which just are in the first 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes of the film, that most of your scenes are with people who were actually acting for the first time. Including Janelle Monáe, who plays your girlfriend, the two guys doing a drug deal on the corner, or local neighborhood people who auditioned for the film. All of the kids, including the
Alex.
kid who plays Chiron,
Yeah.
all are non-actors or beginning actors. Barry Jenkins even says, you know, compared to Mahershala, I had only made one film, and that was 8 years ago. So I'm imagining you showing up, tight time frame, very short shoot, and you're sort of the elder statesman, at least in the first part of the film, with your group.
I'm the old dude.
You're the old dude. Yeah. So how did you and the director create a space in which people who are new to filmmaking could connect with you, with each other, and with the story in such a deep and truthful and tender way?
I think if you don't approach this work humbly, it will humble you. Acting, the work, the process, it's a very humbling thing. And so I always go into each project as a student, and I'm trying to learn. I'm learning from Alex. Like with that little kid, I learned more from that little kid than Kevin Spacey, honestly. Like, name it. I'm not kidding. I'm not just saying that. What I love about Alex is he was in like a drama program at school. His teacher is actually in the movie. His teacher is the principal.
She's the principal, right?
Who in the second chapter is kind of having it out with him after he gets beat up. But so what I loved about working with Alex is he has something that maybe I had here, you know, in that he's just raw and committed and just ready to go. And there will be market shifts in each take if the director gave him a note. But besides that, after they call cut, he's over dancing in the corner, doing his thing or whatever. And then Barry goes, all right, Alex, you ready? He goes, yeah, I'm ready. And then boom, action, and he drops in. But what I want to say about him is, here's the thing. So for somebody like myself who's been working a long time, I have my things, I have my isms, you know, and which I hate, but I do. I have those things, or not hate, but I have things I go to or things that I find myself doing or go, I gotta work that out. But I also have experience. When you're up against somebody when you're working with somebody who is that raw and that pure, and is almost kind of in a documentary, you better figure out how to get out that movie and be in the documentary with them. Otherwise, you will be the false note, you know? And so then I'm like up here just looking at how to like relieve, how to get rid of some of that. That becomes baggage in this context, you know? Working with on House of Cards, that is so worked out, like that show is so clean, and there is a technique to even being, you can't not have acted and be on that show. Like, you will get murdered. It won't, like, it won't happen, like you won't make it. But in this context, that is the perfect setting for people to bring what they bring to it and tweak it. But for an actor or someone who's been doing it for a long time, you gotta almost unlearn things in order for you to be able to be in that environment. So that, for me, was about like tapping into his body, so he kind of like lumbers, and like the weight and feel, the humidity of that city, like getting into, like finding those elements in order for those things to affect me and hopefully play truthfully. But that was the hardest thing. So it was a real gift for me to work with Alex in particular. Was really, really, truly a gift. And then the actor that I worked with, who was not a first-time actor, Naomi Harris.
She plays the mom.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. She did that, the mother, she did that in 3 days. She had 3 days to shoot that.
Yeah.
And was able to do that in the middle of touring the James Bond Spectre tour that she plays Moneypenny or whatever, and stopped doing that for 3 days to knock this out and disappear. So yeah, that was, yeah, I called my manager after working with her and was like, I survived. She's extraordinary.
In the final scene in part one, Little asks you, I just watched it again, Little asks you what a faggot is, and then he asks about, are you a drug dealer? And to me it seems like he takes those answers from you as the information that he needs, and he not only like walks out of the house, he walks out of that chapter of his life. The next time we see him, he's 17.
Right.
You are left behind,
Yeah.
and your face is bowed, and it's clear that you're just, that is the moral wound to admit that you're a drug dealer to this kid that you love. So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about how you and the director and Janelle Monáe and Alex got ready to go into that tough stuff, bullying, homophobia, crack epidemic, all that stuff. It's like, you know, was he really still just dancing in the corner and then dropping into that scene, or did you guys prep in some way? Talk about it.
He was a little less active that day, but totally aware of the weight and gravity of the scene. That scene, that's the scene where anytime I read something, I get the scene that scares me, and I go, oh God, okay. But I also know that's also the scene that makes me know that I know. That's why I want to do the movie, though. You know, that's
stakes.
Yeah, like that's the creative payoff, the artistic. Like you're always looking for the opportunity to go further and to push yourself. So, you know, having this breakdown at the end of a scene is like just not what. It's not super exciting. Like it makes me nervous, you know, made me really nervous going into it. But when you're done, you feel relieved and enjoy having had the opportunity to discover that work and to share it and get rid of it. And so I think for me, we spoke, Barry and I spoke a bit about it. I didn't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to get heady. I don't like overthinking stuff. And we walked away. But I think for me, essentially, that scene was about shining the light on what would shame Juan. And that's different for different people. Like a little kid can ask someone about being a drug dealer and the guy might not even care. But for Juan, what that young man means to him, and I think in how, because look, Juan is Cuban. Juan is Afro-Cuban. He's been in the States for 30-something years, but he's an Afro-Cuban. So in Miami, where the vast majority of Cubans are very fair skinned, Juan doesn't totally fit in, right? So you talk about a little kid, you talk about girls and dating and friends and all this stuff, and how people begin to get separated out through colorism. And so here it is, a guy who is a little bit of an island within his own community because he's not really black either. He just can fit in easier and assimilate with black culture. But at the end of the day, he's not an African American. Those are very different cultures, different music, different experiences, and even though they're brown people. So he recognizes Chiron. He recognizes something in Little about, he understands what it is to not fit in, to not be a part of the tribe. So to connect with him from such an early age for Little, for Chiron, and to feel good about impacting a young man in a positive way. The drug dealers I knew weren't guys who were out there looking for somebody to shoot. Like it happens, but that's really a product of television and music and entertainment. Those were the guys who would teach you how to work on your left, who bring stuff to the barbecue, didn't want to see you become drug dealers. Like they really did not want to see you become a drug dealer. The guys who would tell you to stay out of jail are the guys who've been to jail. They'll be like, don't go to jail. You don't want to go to jail. You don't want to be doing that. You're going to end up in jail, man. You don't want to be dealing with what So those are the guys that I knew. So to get to play one of those guys, to me, like a lot of those guys were, and I'm not trying to elevate the position of drug dealer to make it like a minister or something, but I am trying to say that the reality is that those guys could be so much more human than people who have great jobs and wonderful families. Like those guys could be the ones who will really look out for you. And so to disappoint this young man in that way, it's the first time that Juan is aware of what it is that he's doing. Like he never, the night before when Juan sees Paula buying drugs, Juan is a drug dealer, but he delegates. He's not on the corner. He's not a corner boy. So when he goes to check up on the spot and he sees her there, and this is all new information for him. So when Little asks him, "Are you a drug dealer?" That's part one. Like, oh, he knows I'm a drug dealer. And then, do you sell my mom drugs? He immediately is making the connection and how his actions basically indirectly affect the person that he cares about, And so he just feels shame and disappointment in where he is at. And he's never really had to think about it because people understand you got a couple of options. And that's a solid option if you can do it and not, which it isn't, but it is. It's a solid option. Keep it clean, try to stay out of trouble, try not to hurt anybody. And there's those guys out there like blue collar, straight up drug dealers who just want to stay out of trouble and keep a real low profile. And I've known people like that, honestly. So anyway.
In the fall, a spoken word artist from Oakland named Shanaka Hodge. Do you know her work?
No, I don't know Shanaka.
She's a friend of Ryan Coogler, so
Okay.
they're probably same age. She visited us and did a performance on campus. And she said that if you want to know where a culture is heading, look at the art. She says that's where the change is happening first. Do you share her view? And if so, what does Moonlight show us about where African American arts are heading and where we as Americans are heading?
Wow. First, I do think that is true. I love this generation. I really admire you guys. I do. I really do. I'm not just saying that. Thank you. You're welcome. And the reason is I think that this generation has expectations that our generation wasn't aware of. Because look, I was born in 1974. So Martin Luther King was shot 7 years or something before I was born. So where our country was at when I came into the world was a really different place. Yeah. And so I still had a grandmother telling me to not rock the boat. Like you gotta kinda kind of kowtow, you know, whatever, kowtow, and kind of make sure you don't upset anybody, like, because you're just lucky to have a job, right? Because, yeah, I got stories. But anyway, so this generation has not grown up with, and this is in part like a little bit what's interesting to me about some of like sort of the activism and whatnot, that they have, because of like the cell phones, right? That there is, I think it's served to shock this generation, where they go, oh, what do you mean we're not gonna get treated equally? I didn't grow up expecting to be treated equally. You know what I mean? Like we didn't, and that's not a diss, it's just, I love that about this generation, that they have this expectation to be treated like everybody else is treated. We didn't get to do that. Like, we were constantly told, you had to be, honestly, we were always told, you gotta be 10 times better to be considered equal.
Harder, right.
Like, we were always told that. So I don't think this generation has got that message, and I would hope they don't need that message, you know? So I think because of how their resources and the accessibility to be able to film something and post it. We made that movie, that was the lowest budget film to ever win Best Picture in history.
Amazing.
So, thank you. But what that says, like, if you really look at what that says for a movie to be made with $1.5 million, like really like a grad school budget movie, for it to win Best Picture, what that says is that creativity wins. Like, tapping into your unique voice is what wins. Like, that's a story. The guy who wrote that program is the head of Yale right now. The guy who wrote that movie is a dude from Liberty City, Miami, from the hood, a playwright, Terrell Alvin McCraney, and he runs Yale Drama now, and the writing program. Barry Jenkins is the director is a block away, grew up together, they're a year apart. They grew up in the same neighborhood. Those projects that I was out in front of in the car, at the beginning, that's where the director grew up, in there. He was heating up water, pouring it into, like, so to me, when you talk about the future, the powers that be need creative people. They can't create it. They can't do it. They don't. They just have the money, but they need your voice. So I think, right, and the youth is kind of like, I just bought a camera for $700, and I got a couple of friends who were like solid actors. We're gonna shoot this film, and then they'll post it, put it up, or enter into some festival, and then they're selling. Like, that's that. So it is changing, because the creativity, the intelligence, people have the access, they can edit it, they can figure it out. And so that's why the music industry is where it's at. That's why all of art and industry is where it's at, and these labels are falling apart and things closing, is because you have people who can make it themselves. And I think that is going to benefit the world, because we're gonna get messages that are not controlled by a larger agenda who says, we gotta clean this up so that it plays well in Idaho. Like, you don't have to do that. You know?
Yeah. Well, I have to go back to your launching pad from graduate school. It seemed like you were on your way to a career in stage acting. Your first role out of graduate school was The Great White Hope at the Arena Stage, reviews in the New York Times. And I know you've done a little bit of live theater, but mostly it seems like film and TV. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Me either.
You go where the work is when you're an actor, obviously, always. But talk to us about how film acting differs from stage acting. What does each allow you to do? And dare you express a preference for one or the other, or are they two different flavors and you enjoy them both?
I enjoy them. I enjoy them both. Stage acting is the hardest, though. It's so hard. It's so hard. It's really rewarding in a different way. but it's by far the hardest because, you know, you could be playing, like, imagine if you're playing Macbeth or, you know, or did The Great White Hope, and like your wife dies every night, and like you gotta like break down every day. And so I'm drinking like a gallon of water every day and like stressed out over like this show going well. And literally I did The Great White Hope, this play about Jack Johnson, first black heavyweight champ of the world. I'm doing this in 2000. And it was a big job at that time, like walking out of school to have. And I just felt so much pressure, and it was all because of one scene. Everything else was cake in that play to me. Like I knew how to play those notes. It's just the section that you gotta play, that everything comes together for the climax. Like to get that right, to try to get that every night, it just took such concentration and focus that means I was focused 5 hours before I even got to the theater to be able to do that well. So it was so exhausting and so much pressure to carry like a 3.5 hour play that I had to pick my moments and going back to that. But I also moved to LA right after school. So I did independent film right out of school called Making a Revolution. I did that for a month right out of school, and then I walked right into the arena stage, and that was my first paid, like my first theater gig. And it was amazing, but I got back to New York and I basically did one of those, packed a bag. I was broke, had a buddy pass. My grandmother worked for United at the time, or had just retired from United. So I flew to LA or out here for the tax of a flight, went down to LA for a bag, and I booked a pilot in like 2 months. So because I booked the pilot and suddenly I was on a series, I kind of found myself in the year 2000 when TV was very different then. TV then was CSIs and Law and Orders, medical ER, like medical shows. There were no serial dramas. There were like, meaning stories that were continuing and revealing themselves. Like none of that was happening. It was just straight up, where'd he go? Point the gun and like that. So, but you could pay off your debt. You could pay off your college loans, right? So, and I went to grad school. So fortunately I played ball here, but grad school, like that was all me. So I had to figure that out. And, but I've never been really attracted to commercial things. Like that's really not my voice doesn't connect to that as well. I've done it and tried to do my best within it, but I've always been attracted to the thing where like you're not gonna make any money on, but you're gonna walk away creatively fulfilled, you know? So I found myself in just trying to book the next job. And in booking the next job, then you're like on a series for however many years, or working X amount of months out the year. So I just couldn't get back to it. I just couldn't get back to theater, and I had to be real careful when I made that move, because then too, for a working actor, really trying to survive, you don't know when you're gonna book your next job. I can't pull myself out and not do pilot season when there used to be pilot season. Which will hopefully one day we'll have a much longer, different conversation. I can explain a lot of that stuff to you. But I couldn't pull myself out of pilot season and go do a play that I'm gonna make a couple $100s a week on when I could book like my gig, you know, like your next. So that's why I didn't really do theater. But real quick I'll say is theater, I think it's just a matter of volume, in that I will never forget I'll never forget, you were directing me on something. It might have been in your acting class, but I remember you saying, "Oh, okay, Mahershala, you've gotta reach the back of the house. So, you know, it's gotta be larger, like bigger." So. And I look at Rebecca and I'm like, and I really meant this, because I didn't really have the language at the time, or you know, the vocabulary as far as how to describe the work. But I looked at it, I was like, "Oh, you mean overact?" She was like, not quite. But what that meant to me was, and far as, look, I was brand new to it.
Right.
What I was doing was for television. She was trying to get me in a theater. And so with theater, everything is larger and bigger until the dialect of that form is larger than it is on television. So if I'm standing in front of you doing all these gestures right now, you might like, yo, bro, back up, you know? But in this space, it works because you're, you know, some distance from me. That's how theater is with film. I get to read what somebody is thinking, like, because there's close-ups. And so the proximity to the audience in that shared experience is just different. The gap is closed. But in order for me to do my job, I have to make sure the person all the way in the back of that in the corner of the theater walks away having a very similar experience to you. And so that's a matter of volume, size, filling that space when, and it's great. So real quick, I'll say,
No, don't rush.
I did a play on a year ago. Yeah, like we just wrapped, called Smart People, Lydia Diamond. And yeah, thank you. You should have came backstage afterwards. So we did this play, Smart People, Lydia Diamond, in New York. And I remember we were in previews and I started getting really frustrated and worried because the director, gentleman by the name of Kenny Leon, had said, he kept interrupting me. Like, so I would, be in the scene, and he's like, can't hear you. I was like, can't hear you. All right, Kenny. Can't hear you. I was like, okay, Kenny, no one else is getting this note. Like, what's up, man? So eventually, I had to figure out how to speak at a certain volume, but still feel like I was having an intimate experience with somebody in a kitchen.
Right here, like we're having a private conversation.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
that is such an adjustment.
It's hard to do.
For your mind. It was so hard to get back to, and I think we did it. We did it, and it went well, and well reviewed, whatever. But that was.
So that muscle is still there.
It's still there. It's still there. I want to go back, like maybe in a year, do something. But yeah, it was challenging.
A long time ago, Mahershala, I asked you if you thought there was something special about St. Mary's that fosters creativity in its students. And I was thinking specifically of creative writing on this campus, acting, painting. Do you remember what you said?
No, I don't. No. But I'm sure it was true.
Yeah, it was memorable. This is what he said. He says, there is something special, Rebecca. It's the trees.
That's funny. I thought that was like, well, the nature.
He says, the trees at St. Mary's are working on you and making you an artist the whole time you're here.
It's true. It's true. It's true.
Which I guess is my question is, are you getting enough tree time?
That's what I'm hiding out in a city about an hour from here for another 3 weeks or so and enjoying these trees. I had to unplug from it's why I moved out of New York, actually. I moved back to California a year ago. And two things. I was having a vertical experience, and sometimes you need a horizontal experience. You need to be able to see that sun come up and go down. You need to see some trees. You need to be able to slow down and make sure that you have the time and space to take inventory of what's going on with you. Like, what's going on with you right now? Like, really, like, what are you going through? What are you processing? What do you need to improve on? You're around a bunch of horns and honking and cars and stuff. Like, you can, and there's times for you to do that. But at a certain point, you have to find ways to unplug and check in with yourself. And nature never distracts you from doing that. Stepping out of it, putting my damn phone down and letting all that go for a little while. Like, I've had to not be communicative for several months now, just because I was about to go crazy, like literally, like you're just doing something like all the time, like every day there's an event and something to get dressed for and somebody call. And it's wonderful to get to do all that, but at a certain point, you gotta go, oh, how do I take ownership of my experience so that I don't lose myself in this? And part of that is going for a walk and sitting up under a tree or watching that sun come down or looking at those stars, turning that phone off and just kind of just being in it a little bit, because like you need yourself, like we need ourselves, like we really do. And so I think nature always helps with that. And look, the city, the streets, the concrete, the pulse, it all has its place, but I know if I get out of it, I can go back to it and not be assaulted by it, you know, in some way.
When you were here at St. Mary's, writing poetry was really important to you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, but the year after you graduated, you came back and did a spoken word
Yeah,
piece.
of course I remember that.
That with 3 other actors.
Yeah.
And
Sadia and yes.
John.
Yeah.
Part of a student festival is called From the Margins to the Center.
Mm-hmm.
Title from Bell Hooks. Are you still writing?
I'm working on something right now. I'm writing a project.
Can we ask
yeah.
if it's a film script?
Yeah, it's a film script.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a film script. Yeah.
If you could go back in time, what advice would you give to yourself as a freshman arriving
As a
at St.
freshman.
Mary's for your first year of college?
Well, you know, I wish I understood time a little bit more, the value of it. It's a hard thing to explain, you know, even having a child now, like I just think about how important she is to me, but how important my time is with her. But also just knowing I just don't have enough time for just anything, like to properly do things the way in which I want to. So I'm like fighting to create that time. But I think I wasted a lot of time here. I don't mean that like, I just think I could have did better. And I think sometimes like when you're 18, 19, and you're coming out of high school and you have this different layer or degree of freedom, like parents are not like right on top of you and you got your own room and space and you're like, I'm a man, you know, like, yo, can you send my allowance?
Can I bring my laundry home this weekend?
Yes. But I think I sensed it. I was dealing with, my dad was dying at that time when I kind of got here. And I allowed certain things to distract me. But if I could go back, and I have no desire to, but if I could go back, meaning like it's hard to get up here, yo, like it is. I think I would just really try to encourage myself to have, for my expectations of myself to be in alignment with my effort in time. You know, like I think we have high expectations. Yeah, I'm about to get straight A's, I gotta get whatever. But then like our effort isn't always in alignment with the desired destination, you know? And I think I had to learn that the hard way. And so people who know me, like who really know me, just know I go hard, like I really do. Like if I get focused, I'm gonna get, cause I there's no other way, like I gotta do it, you know? And I don't think I quite understood that then. And I'm thinking particularly like, I think I wasted a lot of time just kind of like chasing girls or like, you know, just, and for what that meant for me, not meaning like I was up here sleeping around, meaning though, that it was too important to me. Like that relationship was too important to me. Like to have that was when I needed to be about chasing me. Like I needed to chase this, you know, and learn what I was, not like, well, who's she with now? Like, she ain't called me back? And like, come on, man, like it's not, you gotta value yourself and just know that there's nobody here that is more valuable than you. Like, they're just not. There's nobody, like most of the people, you are not, as much as you appreciate them and love them, like, you know, you're gonna walk away with it. I got a handful of guys left from my time here that still contribute to my life.
Yeah.
And we contribute to each other's lives, you know? But besides that, the reason we're still in each other's lives is because they're about something. They're trying to do something with themselves. They're trying to be good fathers and good husbands, and like, those are my brothers, you know? And I just wish I could have cut through some of the nonsense a little bit. I could have said, but I don't know if it's possible too. I don't know if I think you kind of have to, like, it's a safe place to kind of screw up a little bit, you know, long as it's nothing too crazy, you know, but I value the successes and the failures because it's given me perspective about everything. And so anything I have that I own, I value because it didn't come easy, you know? So.
Let's end with some questions from the students, shall we? We have them collected here. So this one comes from Mary Rose. We'll just have time for a couple. Mahershal's let us know that he needs to leave soon. What advice can you offer for beginning conversations about race, class, gender, sexuality across different generations?
Well, my advice is that you have to step into that space, whatever that space be, whether it's in your dorm room with your roommate or in a more official setting. But everyone has to step into that space without arrogance. And when you do that, when you step into that space with an open heart, to not reprimand anyone, but to share and to listen, and no particular person necessarily be the one in authority per se, but step into that space without arrogance and an open heart and allow people to share what their experiences are and listen to them and share your experiences. That I think we can figure out how to collaborate, how to exist in space together, how to really be a community. And I think you have to have, I think that there has to be reciprocity in order for there to be, like, really be true community, that where everyone is giving and respected, you know, and where you look out for each other. But sometimes that leans one way. And so we have to, in all these circles in the planet, figure out how to really truly look at each other as equals and learn what the other person, people, family, like what it is that we have to offer to this. But it's not an easy fix, you know, it really isn't. And there's a lot of, people are pent up and angry, you know, and feel unrecognized, you know, disenfranchised. And so they need to talk about it, you know. Sometimes some people feel like to the point where they need to act on it, you know, and you know, we don't want that. We want people to be able to feel like their voice is heard and feel supported, you know, really be supported, because we are different. We're different. That's okay. We're different. But we're all equal in that we are different and unique. And so we need to learn what is valuable, what is very rich about each and every one of us, you know, about our different groups. And I think we will be improved as a result of that. But that takes humility, it really does. Like, even if you are in a position to cuss somebody out, like, I still think you have to enter that situation with a degree of humility. Otherwise, I don't think your message will really penetrate. I really don't, because it'll be convoluted.
Great question, great answer. One more? We have time for one last question. What is your most fun memory of St. Mary's?
Spunk. spunk, doing spunk with you, and
I didn't write that question.
yeah, yeah, like being on this stage. It was my second play, and I was with my good friend Luke Mon, Frank, and
Yeah.
Michael Kelly, and Sadia Davis, and I just, it's like a world opened up. Like that play, I wish you guys could have saw it. It felt special, it really did. Like it just felt so good to be able to offer that up.
Mahershala, it's been so amazing to connect with you again.
Thanks.
Really. Great, it was great. Thank you all. Thank you, Mahershala. I love you.
Love you. Thank you so much.
So much. Thank you so much. It was great. You did great.
We're gonna go to the reception now.
We'll walk out.
Hey, thank you.